Greetings and salutations, and once again we are in for a treat of the One Talent Challenge with the Barbarian. Still in normal, I'm in Act 2. I killed Radamant. I believe I went and got the cube. I did. And now it's time to go get the Staff of Kings. Did I get the Staff of Kings in the Maggot Lair? I did not get the Staff of Kings. So it's time to pay a visit to the Maggot Lair. I'm going to consolidate these gems. It's already getting out of hand. It's driving me crazy. Today, the topic that I'm going to kind of talk about is closely related to something I saw on Twitter. And I know people are like, oh my God, you're on Twitter way too much. Well, I get on there and I check things out. And I poke around and I, read some stuff, see some what essentially could be described as news. And when I'm on Twitter, I'm sitting there reading, looking at memes. Who doesn't look at memes on Twitter? I mean, come on, if you're not looking at memes on Twitter, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? You're probably working, but yet, nevertheless, I'm on Twitter, and I'm, uh, you know, reading stuff, looking at memes, and so apparently, some musician, whoever, I'm guessing she's a musician. I don't know who she is. I don't pay much attention to everything. Sabrina Carpenter? Don't know who that is. Anyway, she apparently was cheated on. And I got to thinking, what's the main cause of it? Because it really got me thinking about it. Now, I know I've said this before. I'm not a mental health professional, and I'm not a relationship therapist or anything. But technically, even though I'm not a relationship therapist, I might as well have been one in high school. I mean, everybody in my class was like coming up to me and wanting relationship therapy and wanting relationship counseling. And by every single person, I mean my entire class. All my classmates were like, "Oh, I'm having a problem in my relationship," blah blah blah. And they'd come to me, the guy that was eternally single in high school, and it's just like, yes, we want relationship counseling from the eternally single dude. Do you? Well, I ended up having a knack for it. And I would tell them exactly what needed to happen in the relationship. And of course, they would always do the opposite. You give them advice and they go off and they do the opposite. And then when it doesn't work, they come back and they blame you for their failure. And I'm like, well, did you do this? Well, no, we did this other thing. Well, that was the exact opposite of what I told you. If you had done what I told you, you'd have actually had it. Nah. But anyway, I got to thinking, and I've been dwelling on it for quite some time. What causes relationships to fail? And the only thing I can seem to find that is the true, I don't want to call it a hinge pin, because that's, as much as that is the truth, the only thing I can see is that there's what I call the three validations, or the three pillars of validation. Now, the three pillars of validation are emotional, physical, and psychological. Now, the physical validation is not what you think. Everybody thinks, oh, being physically intimate. No. That's part of it, but not all of it. I'm going to go get some stamina potions so I can keep running. Pardon me for that. So, that's part of it, but not all of it. And when you look at it, you have to have at least two of the three pillars of validation intact. If you're not fulfilling psychological, emotional, or physical, emotional, or psychological, physical, there will be a problem. It will start conflict. Now, what do I mean by this? Physical validation is sometimes physically being there for them, putting your arm around them, letting them know you care, letting them know that you're there for them and that you have their back. It can be something that simple. Sometimes it's monetary physical validation. knowing that you have them monetarily, you have their back, that you're going to be there for them, that you can support them and care for them. That falls under physical validations. They feel validated when that's there, right? Emotional validation is making them feel needed and wanted. Okay? No, wait. Sorry, I stand corrected. Emotional validation is them being heard and understood. Heard and understood. Whereas psychological validation is being needed and wanted. Because if that's even in today's society. Like if you walk outside into today's society and people make you feel unwanted or unneeded, that's when you start having mental health problems. Because you'll start getting depressed. Because you don't feel like you have a place. You don't feel wanted, you don't feel needed. So that's the psychological validation. Now, if you fail to get two of these validations and work on them, your relationship will fall apart. Because that's when seeking behavior begins. Now, what defines seeking behavior? When you originally get into a relationship, you have that spark. Because it's a new relationship, it's new, you're always discovering new things about one another. You're looking around, you get to know one another, you're learning more about one another. And you always have that almost like puppy-like exuberance when looking at it. You sit there and you're like, you're excited to spend time with them. You're excited to be around them. You wonder what the next day brings. But go along 6 months in, 8 months in, a year in, and that kind of fades. And obviously it's going to, because unless you're, going out and being a superhero and saving the world every day, you're going to run into the doldrums. You're going to run into, the daily grind. So you have to consistently remember that that these people need to be validated, you yourself and the other party as well. Now, what does this mean when you lose one of the validations? Let's say you have to tighten up the purse strings and you can't be as, philanthropic with the money. And so you tell them, okay, well, we're going to have to, cut back a bit, a little bit here and there. We're going to have to make sure we don't have, we're going to have to make sure we can't go to the concert because of whatever, or we can't go here because we don't have enough money, or you'll get a work cut back and then you don't feel like you can support them that way financially. So things like that crop up. And when that does, that starts bringing that validation into question, which causes, if you have the other two pillars of validation intact, you make them feel needed and wanted, heard and understood. You then don't really have to worry about anything. You're going to have a few arguments. You're going to have heated moments where you're having heated discussions. And that's because there's that validation that's failed. Okay? Now, if you have a second validation failing, right? So if your second validation's failing and you're no longer hearing or understanding them for what they are and for who they are and for what they mean, on top of the monetary problem, that's going to inspire seeking behavior. And seeking behavior is exactly as it sounds. They are going to go out looking to fulfill that validation they are missing. And when they start looking to find that validation, that's usually when cheating occurs. Usually. There are obviously exceptions to the rule. There's always an outlier. But in general, there's always going to be that rule, which is the seeking behavior begins and they go looking. Now, as I say, I don't think those are working. So I shouldn't be draining stamina that fast. But anyhow, if they do go into seeking behavior, there's a way to reconcile it. You'll always hear like once a cheater, always a cheater. Now, I don't know if I wholeheartedly believe that. The reason I say that is you have to really delve into what caused them to cheat in the first place. Some people cheat, they do it for the thrill, and those are the outliers. The people that are just doing it for the thrill, they're the outliers that are not talking about the validations. Most of the time, it's like, oh, I wasn't getting this at home. And so they went looking for it, and that person fulfilled them. And then they got attracted to that person. That's what happens, generally, 9 times out of 10. And this is why understanding the validations, understanding how to keep them maintained, is what's going to save a lot of relationships in the future. Because then you can understand what makes, what you have to do to keep them around. But you also would have to learn, like, what's their love language, And people say, well, what do you mean love language? There are some people out there that prefer to be showered with gifts. Then there are people like me that if you get me a gift, I'm going to be like, I've already got too much. I don't need this. I appreciate the sentiment, but you could have had a better use of your money. It comes off as sounding cold, but realistically speaking, I'm just trying to be kind to the point of they shouldn't have bought it. Now, other people like to be held, a hug or whatever, physical touch in that regard. They like being drawn in and embraced and being told, sweet things in their ear, whisper sweet nothings in their ear. Some of them like that. Some people are just naturally cuddly, and that's their love language. So this is when talking to them and sitting down and getting to know them is a better thing. Like long-term courtship, as much as it's died in the Western world, is alive and well in Asia. But the problem is the courtship in Asia takes a touch too long, if you ask me. The courtship in, say, like Japan, right? In Japan, you start hanging around this person as a friend. And then when you start hanging around them as a friend, you then get to know them a little bit better. And then you decide that maybe you have feelings for them, so you confess to them that you have feelings for them. And they'll either accept those feelings or they'll turn them down. And if they turn them down, you go back to being friends, no harm, no foul. Right? You confess, and then maybe they feel the same way, and then you start dating. That method, although that is amazing because it allows you to connect at a deep level, can possibly take too long, which lends to the population decline that happens in Japan and the lack of marriages and everything. Because you're having too many people take too long to get to that point. Over here, it's way too fast. People jump into a relationship without knowing the person, and then it's like, well, we're just going to learn as you go. No. That's way too fast, number one, and it needs to be curtailed. Slow it down. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. But a lot of the people out there today they don't get it. And so they try to rush into the relationship and they wonder why it doesn't work and they wonder why it falls apart because they don't take time to learn how the other person feels loved. They don't learn anything about that person, and then they don't know how to maintain the validations. And the validations fall apart, and then seeking behavior begins. And then so they'll have their amicable parting of ways. And sometimes not even an amicable parting of ways, they'll just have their parting of ways. And it's like, relationships here could be a lot easier to resolve if people just started using a different approach, started using courtship instead of jumping right in. I think it would go a long way. And I think it could turn around the dating world as a whole. And people say, well, okay, well, if you're Dr. Lovenstein out there and you know what it takes and you know the validations and you know how to make people feel loved and sit down and have that conversation about love language and everything, well, quiz, if you're so good at it, why are you single? I'm oblivious to flirting. I can't tell when a woman's flirting at me at all. I mean, they would have to lay it on thick and smack me in the face with a 2x4. And even then, I'd sit there going, thanks for the compliment. It just doesn't sink in. So I'm completely oblivious to it. I mean, we're talking like parking lot. It's empty up there when it comes to flirting. Which, despite what other people may think, that's actually a skill. And some people have it. A lot of people won't. This guy doesn't. Be that as it may. People don't like, and this is gonna come. This might come across as being too harsh. And this is my personal experience. This is my personal experience throughout the whole thing. In my personal experience, when I hear the words, "You're too smart for your own good," and it comes from a woman who has been talking to me and we're friends or friendly and we're close, and she says to me, "You're too smart for your own good," that sends up a red flag. That's a big red flag for me. Because when she says that, that means I can't deceive you. Now, people would say, well, that's not what that means. Well, I've heard that argument before, but let me tell you something. Every time I've heard that come out of a woman's mouth, it usually follows some form of, how do I want to put this? What's the word I'm looking for? I can't even think of the word right now. They've kind of bloated the truth. You know what I mean? They're going way too elaborate. They're taking it like they're taking what actually happened, and they're making a fish story out of it. It's usually after they say something like that. They'll say something and I'll call them on it. I'll be like, okay, well, that doesn't add up to your previous statement. And I'll be like, well, you said this, and now you're saying this, which is in direct contradiction to what you just said. And when I do that, they look at me right square in the eyes and they go, you're too smart for your own good. That's like, why couldn't you just believe the lie I was trying to peddle? That's exactly what it reads. So it doesn't work for me. So between the fact of being oblivious to flirting and the fact that I can see through the facade that they try to peddle on me, it never seems to work out. Shocking, I know. However, people say, well, you haven't really tried. I have. I've tried many, many, many times in the past, all of which ended poorly. They said, well, why don't you take your own advice? I did exactly what I would have done. I courted them the way I court... that people should court a woman. I went and I approached them as a friend. And I saw them as a friend, interacted with them as a friend. And then when I got to the point when I thought to myself, I could see myself having feelings for this individual, I would tell her. And I would get fed a line of one thing after another. And then when I said, but that's not what you said a few months ago, you're too smart for your own good. But back to the pillars of validation. And I think people need to understand that it is by no way a foolproof plan. You could validate all the pillars, and they could still be an outlier and cheat. They could still be an outlier and deceive. They could still decide to do something because of poor judgment. Lord knows this country and this world has poor judgment recently. Lack of judgment is another issue altogether. It's a completely separate issue altogether. It's an issue that people need to really work on. Then again, we were the nation that ate Tide Pods, so we did it for fame. So I don't expect much in the way of making a big headway in there. expecting people to have good judgment skills after looking at somebody eating detergent and saying, I want to do that for my 15 minutes of fame. Judgment skills not there. Risk assessment not there. It's like, you might want to hold off on the old risk assessment and judgment until you can curtail the idiocy, you know? That's not to say that, this country is filled with faults. I mean, that can-do attitude is a good thing to have. Just, put a little thought into what you're doing before you have that can-do attitude. Hold up. Let's funnel them all down this hole. Wait a minute. That's a lot of damage. Call Phil Swift. We got a lot of damage here. Ugh. I wonder who can actually use the falchions. What am I doing there? I thought that was a vendor window. I've lost my mind. I wonder who can actually use falchions to make them fast. Now. Oh, wait. Potions. Nevertheless, back to what I was saying prior, before all of this. I think that if we really looked at the 3 validations and 15% mana or 15% magic item, that'll be nice. I think there's a lot we could learn from it, and I think that we can learn more the longer we carry forward. I figure there's a lot more we could learn from a lot of things. And I think the three pillars of validation is a great start. But I'm not saying, like I said, it's not a be all end all cure, fix all, etc. As it's not. But noticing it before it gets bad enough to start seeking behaviors is very helpful, because then you could sit there and say, nope, this pillar of validation's failing. I need to do something. I need to be able to go put more time and energy into it. And you have to make it. You have to make an actual concentrated effort on it. Because there are people that will do something. Like, I knew a guy who his relationship wasn't really going all that well because he stopped putting a concentrated effort on putting his girlfriend first. I need a mana steal. As much as I like the 15% better magic find, I need the mana steal. He stopped putting his girlfriend first, ahead of himself, and he started putting himself before, him and his kids. And I was like, dude, you can't do that. It's like, she's your girlfriend, you got kids together. You gotta make sure she's feeling validated. You gotta make sure that she feels like she's worth more than just, oh, she's the mother of your kids. And he's like, well, how do I do that? I told him. I gave him multiple solutions to his problem. He did none of them. Well, okay, 100% on this one. He did it for about a month, month and a half. And boy, was his relationship absolutely stellar for that month. Then it fell apart. It's like, you gotta maintain it, man. Unlike anything else, you have to maintain a relationship. You can't just, it's not made by Ron Popeil. You can't set it and forget it. Never take it for granted either. Never take it for granted. Because, you might think one day, that it's perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden the next day, you're, sitting at home eating Tostino's pizza rolls, sitting on a beanbag chair in an empty house, which normally had the pitter patter of little feet and somebody that actually cared about you, and you're looking at yourself going, what happened? Where did it go? Where did it go? It disappeared. Okay, well, whose fault is that? Now, you can't play the blame game there. You got to be able to look at it objectively. If you sit down and say, what happened? Where did it go? You got to look at it from all angles. You got to be able to disconnect yourself from the entire issue, from the entire moment, and say, okay, whoa, right? And this is another skill set that I think people can learn. If something is happening in your life, and this is my piece of advice that's helped me navigate my life amazingly. Take yourself out of the equation. All right? Something's going down. You don't know what it is. You don't know where it's going to lead. But you're somehow involved in it. Okay? It goes down poorly. Remove yourself from the equation and ask yourself, especially if it's starting to weigh on your mental health, it's starting to weigh on your, conscience, it's starting to weigh on something like that. Remove yourself from the equation and ask yourself, if this was somebody else, what advice would I give them? Put yourself in the third person. Because when you put yourself in the third person, you'll learn that you give pretty good advice when it's not you. As you sit there and you look at yourself and you think to yourself, I've got this. I'm number one. I got this. I know what I'm doing. And inevitably, you'll do the same thing everyone else does. You'll take that first step forward and you'll go foot first right into a gigantic pile of manure. You'll step right in it. Happens to me. Happens to you. Happens to everyone. And I'm not talking just like a pile of manure. I'm talking like an elephant came by, dropped this huge heap, and you just, with your foot, right in it. It's inevitable. Happens every time. So just remove yourself from the equation. Say to yourself, what advice would I give someone else? And then think about it. Because I guarantee you, when you do that, you're going to be like, I got it. And the advice will be the best advice you could give yourself. Because it'll be the best advice you could give someone else. Ooh, not good. And that's just what I do. Like, I remove myself from the equation. I back off. And pardon me, I muted the microphone there. It's still there. I can feel it in the back of my throat. It's like my body doesn't want me speaking anymore today, but too bad, I'm going to force it. I'll probably end up hoarse tomorrow. But I forgot what I was saying. Hold on, let me think back. You'll give out advice to other people like you would give it out, or you give out advice to other people, and then you're supposed to give out your advice to yourself like you gave it out to other people, because inevitably you'll step into you'll step into a giant pile of manure. Um, the reason why it's better to give out advice to other people and then listen to the advice you gave other people is because we always look at ourselves like, I know what I'm doing, I know how to navigate myself, and we kind of fall into that main character syndrome. And we think, oh, I'm the main character. Yes, you are. But unlike the main character, you are not immune to difficulties, tribulations. You're not immune to consequence. And a lot of people carry that air about them like, it doesn't matter what happens. None of this matters. I should say I will just rise above it all. Yes. So you look down upon the peons underneath you. I'm so sure that it's not going to affect me as a person. Oh, I say. You get that, and everybody gets that attitude about them, and it happens. And then other people say, like, wow, I know a very humble person that doesn't have that attitude. They don't have that attitude publicly. They never show that attitude publicly. They never show it ever. But they have it. It's because everybody's like, oh, I'm my own first, I'm the first person, I'm the main character. Technically you are, but so's everybody. You may be the main character of your story, but they're the main character of their story. And it never fails. Every single person will be like, dear God, I swear these peons have just absolutely caused me nothing but strife. I shall go get a snifter of brandy and sit down and wax villainously about how destitute they are. And everybody's got that mentality like that they're better. Which is why they never take their own advice. They can never remove themselves from the equation. And it actually gets so bad that there's a lot of people out there. This one's not everybody. There's a lot of people out there that even though they can't remove themselves from the equation, they actually try to interject themselves into another equation. But never for the ability to resolve it. They try to interject themselves into the other person's equation just to muck about. Well, it's not good. Those are the people that always stick their nose in someone else's business. You know the type. They'll come in and they're usually gossipy people. They like to dish on everything that's going out there. And they're like, they want to know what's going on in everybody's life but their own. These are the people that it never fails, usually when I meet them, that they want to know everything about everyone else because their life is legitimately a scorched wasteland internally. And I'm not saying that they're just in a bad position in life. It's just they've got nothing going on. It's like Sherman came through, slashed and burned everything, and salted the ground, and that's pretty much what their internal life is. They got nothing going on inside, so they're always sticking their nose in everybody else's business to kind of supplant the fact that they don't live a fulfilling life. Of course, fulfilling is, as you know, a subjective definition. Each person's definition of fulfilling is different from the next. Your definition of fulfilling is different from mine, and so on. And because these people don't have a fulfilling life, they feel compelled to stick their nose into everybody's business. And they always do more harm than good. Even though they come across as though they want to do good and they want to help out. These are the people that, these are the people that come into your life. And I've had people like this in my life too. They claim that they want to, that they want to help out, or they're willing to help any way they can. And they'll stick their nose in there and they'll have a rummage about. And you quickly learn that they're not helping, they're sabotaging. And then when you find out that they're sabotaging, it's never it's never good. But at the same time, you kind of sit there and you're like, I don't want to tell them to bugger off. You know the type. I know the type too. I've had a few of them in my life. Like, they'll always come up and want to know how your life's going. They don't actually really care about you as a person. They care about how your life's going because they want to see what they can actually interject into your life and to see if they can make it worse. But like I said, they play it off as some sort of charitable action, like they're going to try to help you. It's I've they're a piece of work. Easiest way to deal with those types of people is you feed them just enough misinformation that they'll give you the worst advice imaginable to an event that's not actually occurring, or that is occurring but is not as bad as you laid it out to be. Therefore, they believe your life is in tatters. They get that feel good endorphin rush of, I helped, even though they didn't. And they actually helped with nothing because the issue wasn't that big to begin with. I've had people like that. I've had people that wanted to interject, wanted to help out, and they're like, man, they were chomping at the bit to help me out because, they were like, oh, how's your life going? And I was like, well, it could be better. They're like, oh, really? What's the matter? And boy, were they riveted at that very moment. And then I was like, it's this, and I tell them this story that's exaggerated. That was the word I was looking for earlier. This exaggerated story, and get them hooked right in. Mind you, it's not all that. It's not all that deep. It's not all that difficult. It's not all that nuanced, and it's generally already resolved by the time I tell them the story. But I sell it like it's happening in real time, and then they offer up this advice that's utterly worthless, and then I don't take the advice, claim I'm going to take the advice, and they get that little feel good endorphin rush of theirs, and I get to sit there with a smile on my face knowing that they didn't get the chance to ruin it. And then when they don't hear how it turned out, they come back and they ask you 2 months later, oh, hey, how did it turn out? It didn't get resolved the way I wanted. There was some other problems that still are just kind of hanging fire, but it wasn't a loss and it wasn't a win. It was just kind of neutral. Just absolute downplay it. As I'll tell you right now, these people that do this and are always chomping at the bit to help. They 9 times out of 10, they're the one leaking info. That's 9 times out of 10. The 10th time, they're not leaking info, they're just kind of sitting on it, waiting for it to be compromisable, and at which point then they'll capitalize on it. There's those people too. They will wait and wait and wait until something is very they're waiting to get sensitive info. And then when they get that sensitive info, they want to use it against you to either put themselves in a higher position, put themselves so that you're indebted to them, There's many devious ways to go about it. Which is why you do the most intelligent thing, which is you have one solid friend. You can have more than one, but you have one solid friend that you know will never betray you. That solid friend always has your back regardless. Okay? You dish them the actual info. 100%. You do not hold back. You tell them exactly what went on. And only them. Okay? Then, when everybody else comes around, you start feeding different iterations of the story to other people. You can make it a little bit outlandish here and there. You can make it a little bit. You can make it whatever. You could do whatever you want with the story, but exaggerate it just a little bit. For one person, it's here. For one person, it's there. But you exaggerate it just enough. Okay? And here's the reason why. When it leaks out, especially if it's juicy intel, you see, when it leaks out, they'll leak the story exactly as you told it. And that's the hook, to let you know who did it. Is it crafty? Is it deceptive? Yeah. Yeah, it is. But I'm a wood rat. Chinese astrology. So to me, crafty and deceptive is kind of how I handle people that aren't in my close circle. And people would say, wait a minute. Is that how you handle viewers, guests that comment? Well, I genuinely thank people for kind words. I genuinely thank people for comments. Absolutely, 100%. It's genuine. But I'm not going to sit there and divulge information that is compromising to anyone or anything. I will omit names if it's going to hurt somebody. Or I will omit information that could be used against me. That's just tactics. It's like Sun Tzu's Art of War. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a minute. How did we get off the rails of talking about relationships to Sun Tzu's Art of War and how best to handle snitches in your life? Well, simple. All of these things are relationships. They're just on different levels. They're friends relationships that are on different levels. They're social relationships on different levels. And it's how you navigate them. Now, of course, people would say, well, you're a devious schemer and how dare you, and you're a vile individual. I could see now why people don't like you. Well, okay. People don't like me for a lot of reasons. I'm brutally honest is one of them. I actually mentioned this to one of my friends the other day, my friend Tyler. And yes, he's one of the few people I will name by name. Tyler and Dylan are two people that I will name by name because the stuff I say is not compromising. And in fact, paints them in a better light. But as I'm sitting there and I'm talking to my friend Tyler, ooh, wait, that's actually better than mine, isn't it? 4 to 14, 3 to 22, plus 1 cold, 27 poison. It is better. This barbarian's going to be bashing with a javelin. How do you bash with a javelin? I don't know. But I was telling my friend Tyler the other day, if I can remember where I was going to pick up, where I left off. And I don't remember what I was going to say. That's the sad part. I don't remember. It was about, discussing relations and relationships with people and having that social dynamic with people. But I don't know exactly where it was going in it. And it is something that I did tell him. I just can't recall what it was. Having a Deckard Cain moment. Jeez, we're almost at 45 minutes. Let's see if I can try to remember what I was going to say. The interpersonal relationships. Where did it go? No, I was going to say those are the only two friends I named by name because there's nothing that I say about them that is negative or that I say that is compromising. I always paint them in the best positive light. It had something to do with yes, the wood rat thing of Chinese astrology. That's what it was. We were having a discussion about astrology, and he's just like, "Oh, that stuff's fake." I said, "It is, but it isn't. Horoscopes are fake. Horoscopes are just garbage. Astrology, though, is a part of your personality. And a lot of people out there don't believe it, and that's fine. But if you look up a wood rat is a devious schemer filled with false bravado. Now, I don't scheme 100% of the time. I really don't. And I'm genuine. Oh, that's what it was. Honesty. That was the led into this. And I'm genuinely honest with every single person. So much so that I'm bluntly honest with people. And I was telling him, I said, I'm seen in two lights, right? I come up and I tell people exactly what I think. I don't mince words. I don't beat around the bush. I don't sugarcoat. I just tell them exactly what's on my mind. And it's blunt, brutal honesty and truth. 9 times out of 10, I get, that guy's an absolute jerk. Guy's a complete douche. The other 1 time out of 10, I get, I find his honesty refreshing. That's it. This is just, I'm going to be completely honest. Because here's the key honesty, kindness is honesty. If you're kind to somebody, you're going to tell them what they need to hear. If you're nice to somebody, you're going to tell them what they want to hear. Kindness tells the truth, even though it may be cruel. Niceness tells the lie because they don't want to hurt you. So anybody that's being nice, if they're nice to you, they're nice to everyone. So if they're being nice, what are they hiding? They're hiding something because they don't want to hurt you. Because they think it might hurt your feelings or they think it might hurt you in some way. And so they'll be nice. And when they're nice, I don't like nice. I like kind. Kind people that give you a blunt, honest answer. And it's like, yes, please. Ooh, heal stamina. Poison length reduced. Wow, I'm nailing these boots. Getting good ones. I was hoping for like Sanders Rip Rap. Or something else like Gorefoots. But anyway, that honesty, and it's a coin flip. If you're honest with people, they're either going to love you or they're going to hate you. The way I see it, if they hate me for telling them the truth, it'll eventually come around and they'll realize he did me a solid. Yeah. But at any rate, I hope you enjoyed this video. They did go into a heavy topic, but all my Diablo videos do that. It's nothing new. I hope you had a wonderful time. I know I did. We're getting there. Level 19, gonna finish Act 2 in the next one. I hope everybody has a fantastic evening, a wonderful tomorrow, and as always, have a good one.